Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a woman to society.
Then so shall you be. Hey, welcome back to Menace to Society. This is Lisa Landry, and I'm thrilled to speak with today's guest. He writes for television, Huffington Post. You can find his films on Netflix, and you may have already read his hysterically funny memoir, The Pink Marine, My Marine Corps Boot Camp Story. Hello, and thanks for being here, Greg Cope White.
Thank you for having me, Lisa Landry.
And you're also a sixth-generation texan. So aren't you genetically as well as geographically predisposed to join a branch of the U.S. Armed Forces?
Yes, I suppose so. The only difference is that with me is that I was raised by a single mom, and so it wasn't in our house every day. I didn't play Army as a kid, so I did not have that on my radar, actually.
So you're not a military family?
Well, no, not a family, but I did have, because I'm sixth-generation Texan, we've been here a long time, so I had ancestors in the Revolutionary War. I'm in Sons of the American Revolution. I had ancestors in the Civil War, fighting on both sides, actually. And then I had family in World War II, but nothing modern. Nobody in Korea, nobody in Vietnam. So I didn't have that growing up. I definitely didn't have that at all, like I said, just in my daily peripheral. But I did, once I was in, had a patriotism note that woke up.
That makes sense. You know, I'm a member of the Daughters of American Revolution.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so I had I'm a cameo. I had both sides of my ancestors were fighting the British. I almost joined the army once. It wasn't a sense of patriotism that led me there, but I was severely depressed and I was failing out of college. I had a bad breakup, no direction in my life. And then I sat in that recruitment office parking lot and I thought about the film Private Benjamin. And I thought, no, I probably shouldn't do this. I'm not that person. I can't handle this. And you joined before Hollywood even made Full Metal Jacket or Private Benjamin. So you had no idea what you were getting into, did you?
I really didn't. I love that you picked those two movies because the log line for both the book and the TV show that we've written about the book as well, is Full Metal Jacket meets Private Benjamin. I was a fish out of water, and you would have been too. You would have entered that world and adapted. There's no question. But again, because I didn't know what the military was, also because I was a gay kid, I never played Army. I definitely violated my G.I. Joes, I'm sure. But the idea of hanging out with my friends and playing Army, that just wasn't what I was doing. And so I had no idea what that world looked like. And again, I also joined as a total fluke. You know, my best friend was enlisting. And, you know, because you've read the book, my best friend was enlisting. And when he told me that he was going to Paris Island to spend the summer, joining the Marine Corps, and going to boot camp, in all of those words, all I heard was summer camp. So I knew. I loved summer camp. That's what I thought I was getting into. I thought I was getting into this world of canoeing and archery, and maybe I'd get one of those hand-laced wallets that you make in arts and crafts class. So when I got to the recruiter's office, they played a video, and it showed guys, you would have seen the same video. It showed the Marines running up and down hills and jumping up and down cargo nets and carrying rifles and crawling through mud. They had shaved heads, and I thought, wait a second, am I going to be doing that? But I'd already committed to doing it with my friend, and so I thought, how bad can it be? How hard can it be? A little like Clueless. How hard can it be?
So you were a Private Benjamin, only a man.
Yeah, and I came in and felt like I was completely different than anyone else. And I'm sure you've been in situations where you walk into, whether it's a new job or a new school or a party, and you think there's nobody in that room that can identify with you or that you can identify with. And you know within minutes you find common ground with someone.
Yeah, I believe we have more in common than we realize as human beings. But you served back when being homosexual could get you kicked out.
Oh, yeah, kicked first.
Yeah, you'd get your epic ass kicking, your soap party, and then be shown the door and dishonorably discharged just for being gay.
Yeah, I didn't think about that part when I signed up. When I went down to the recruiter with my friend, my best friend, who, by the way, is still my best friend to this day. We both live in California. He's the other part of my book. He was a huge part of this process, the book writing process. He's a doctor now. He's a surgeon here in California. And we are still in touch every single day, by the way. And I'm the godfather of his children. But we were comfortable with each other back then. So he certainly knew that I was gay and was really supportive, which was an awesome experience to have, since it wasn't safe for me to be out in the civilian world, much less the military world. So he knew, and he kept my secret. And when we went to enlist, we weren't thinking about that. We were actually more concerned about, would I be able to do this at all physically? I'd never run a mile. I'm from Texas. I'd never run 10 feet. You drive to the corner.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were concerned about. So when I went through the enlistment process, and the sergeant that's taking me in was asking me questions like, what's your mother's name? Where are you from? Height, weight? Are you a homosexual? I was not expecting that question. And I had to answer as if I had heard that question a million times and that I was ready to answer it and pass a lie detector test, which was looking at this man eye to eye and saying no. So I lied to get in. It was illegal for me to be there. And I technically, even though I had a fantastic military career, I guess I was a bad employee because I was lying and cheating from the get-go.
You didn't even make the weight requirement, though, did you?
Yeah, I never thought about that. I was really skinny. It never gotten in my way except in my head. I hated being skinny because, to me, I didn't look like a man. I didn't feel like a man. I felt little and skinny and weak. And back then, there were no gay role models. So I certainly didn't have any athletes to look up to. I had no one that was saying that my lifestyle was okay. So I came out in this world of hyper-masculine Marine Corps where they were yelling and screaming and calling everybody faggot. But when I heard it, I thought, wow, they're talking to me. But so enlisting, when I went in to take the entrance exam, and they asked me, are you gay? And I got through that lie, I thought it was over. Then they weighed me for the physical part and actually rejected me and said, you don't weigh enough. And I was crushed because here I'd packed 5 suitcases for 13 weeks. You don't just take a toothbrush, but I didn't know that, and I'd never been away for 13 weeks. I needed options.
So you're all
So
packed.
I'm really ready to go. And so to be told that I can't, and I'm kind of a technicality, I was really dejected. But my recruiter had obviously dealt with this before. We had 8 days before we shipped out to Paris Island. And so he said, just eat. Now, at first I thought, wow, I've never gained an ounce in my life. No matter what I eat, I can't do that in 8 days. But Dale, my friend, was on the high school wrestling team, and he was used to gaining or losing 5 pounds in case his weight class was full. So he said, I'll motivate you, I'll help you. And again, totally supportive friend. We ate like crazy. He actually gained 18 pounds. He was so mad. He went into boot camp 20 pounds heavy. And he still emerged victorious and the number 1 in the platoon. But the fact that I gained, was 13 pounds too light for them. I gained 11 pounds at the end of the 8 days. I weighed in again. They still rejected me and said, we just can't be responsible. And I get it. You don't know what's going to happen. And if there's any kind of technicality that people can look back on, they'll use it. So again, I left that physical completely dejected and thinking, okay, I'll see you guys later. Have a nice summer. And the recruiter had obviously dealt with this before. He grabbed me and he drove me to a downtown New Orleans hardware store. I was enlisting in New Orleans. And he took a lead pipe and he pounded it flat. He pulled me into the bathroom, pulled my pants down. I thought it was headed a different direction for a second there. And he taped that lead weight to my skin and then pulled it right on my crotch. And then I pulled my underwear up. We left that place, went right back to the physical where I had just been 30 minutes before. And he talked to the guy and said, he's ready to weigh in again. You just weigh in your underwear. I stepped on the scale. Boom. That needle ticked over to the right weight. And 8 hours later, I was standing on Paris Island, shaved head, holding an M16, thinking, oh my God, what have I done?
You know, when I read that in the book, I thought of that film Hair. You know how like the wrong person gets shipped over to Vietnam, and I know it's not the same by any stretch, but it kind of reminded me that parallel of like thinking, what did I just do? And you,
It's true, and a physical regret.
yeah, and your memoir is so beautiful. It's so funny. There's so much relayed without any sense of self-pity or
Well,
victimization. Like you're
thanks
very,
for picking out the comedy. I didn't know how to tell this story, to be honest. And when I moved to Los Angeles and began writing television, I was writing comedy exclusively. So the early pages of this book were a little trite and silly, and I added some things and kind of fictionalized a couple things. Only, like 20 pages, and I got into it. And a friend of mine read it, and he said, "Wow, you're creating things, and when the truth is so funny." So I tossed that draft and went back to it and just told it like it was. And I was able to use my comedy experience, certainly, but the truth is there's a lot of tragedy, there's a lot of pathos and drama, but there is a lot of humor. I mean, think about it. The picture I just painted of myself, that person trying to be a Marine, that's just in comedy.
oh yeah, the little scrawny gay dude who ended up in the Marines of all places in the 80s by sheer fluke of a friendship and a bond and just like, okay, screw it, I'll go do it too. Buddy system, why not?
Well, remember the gays like the best of everything, and the Marines is the best, so I kind of had to do that. No Army for me, no Air Force, no Navy.
Top shelf,
We'd like
please.
an upgrade.
Right. What's it like though? Because you go in there and, like you said, kind of shady circumstances get you into this venue and you're there in basic training. And now you are one of the smallest guys in the platoon. You are gay, but having to hide it. You have to learn all this typical, very masculine type stuff, shooting guns, pooping in front of dudes you don't know, taking showers with men you're not sleeping with. Obviously everybody's naked showering together. What is it like to live inside, pretending to live inside something? Because you have to be on guard at all times, don't you?
Yeah, and a lot of those things that you described are any gay man's fantasy.
Right.
However, because you're with your peers, everybody's 18 and 19 years old, the last thing you want is to be judged as less than or not able to do the job up to the task. So having to hide my sexuality was rough. It was, there was a fear of being physically attacked because I do not believe that would have been discouraged at all. You take care of your own. There's something called the weakest link, obviously, and I could have easily been the weakest link, and in order for a unit to survive, you have to make sure that everybody is able to accomplish that mission with you. You're not going to be successful if anyone within your ranks is working against you. We're seeing that today in our political climate. We have somebody in charge that is working against us and has successfully divided the country. I believe strongly we're going to get back to country over party. Maybe that's the patriot of me, but I think a true American sees that political parties are not the most important priority in this land. We have to get back to our country.
I firmly agree with you on that. I really, truly do.
But to get back to your question, what it was like was I was worried that if someone knew authentic me, they would still reject me. Now, if you meet a lot of gay people, we're a pretty happy, pretty easygoing lot. We throw a parade every year, for God's sake. But the idea that I wouldn't be accepted in this place where I'd signed a contract to serve was frightening. So it was worth it to lock it up, hide my sexuality, and just do my job.
I want to ask you about that. You were 19. That's a very hormonal age, especially for a young man, 19. And you are surrounded by, as you said, every gay man's fantasy. Dudes showering, dudes masturbating, because, you're all in one room.
Yeah.
Maybe not like to each other or in front of each other, but like, under the blankets, in the shower, in the bathroom, whatever. You're seeing dudes being dudes, and you managed to keep your sexuality in check, your urges, because you had this higher goal. And maybe, you were scared of getting the shit beat out of you too and getting discharged. But higher than that, you were focused on the greater good. I am going to be a Marine. I am not here for phone numbers. I'm not here for hooking up. I'm not here for drama. I am here to become a Marine. So that being said, if you can do that, how is it that it seems like a lot of men, especially in the military, if you're able to do that in the same circumstances, wouldn't it be conceivable that other dudes in the military could not rape or sexually harass their fellow and female soldiers?
I think we'll get there. That's a really interesting question, and I've never thought about the parallel that way before. But again, when I was serving, there was no gay culture, and so there was no. I think the young men and women that are serving in the military today enjoy a freedom based on the fact that the acceptance level outside in society in general has risen. So it's in the air. They see and have interacted, most people, with gay people by the time they're, in high school now. So whether or not they choose to accept it personally, that's their own choice. It's not my responsibility or any concern of mine what anybody thinks of me. But again, to get back to the subject about the way men treat women, we had a huge scandal last year in the Marine Corps with porn. There was some male Marines sharing naked pictures that were illegally obtained of fellow female Marines. All those guys were caught. All those guys were kicked out. Many of them are on trial, but it was a huge scandal. And it really gets to be about respect. And because of the Me Too movement in general society, that is running over into the military. So you can't make someone respect you. There are women in power. There are women that rank very highly. There's a current female head of the Paris Island recruit base. That's huge. So hopefully what's pervasive in the civilian world will spill over into the military, and we'll see a greater respect. It's going to take a long time. There are men that don't believe that women can do everything that they can and that they have a certain place. The first female Marines were allowed to serve in combat, just recently. And then I think last year or year before, the first woman was allowed to do the battle training, the long, intensive, I'm blanking on the word, but it's when you prepare to lead men into battle. You go to a long course, and it's a really tough 6-month course, and no woman had ever successfully completed the Marines training, and the woman did. A couple of women dropped out, and I know somebody dropped out last month from the Army's Ranger program. She had some issue that kept her, I think, an injury. But I think we're going to get there. The men are still going to be dismissive, and they're going to believe that they have a different role in the military than women do. But women are getting a chance. They're able to achieve a rank. Look, it's one of the few places that you get paid the same.
Yeah, men and women are paid the same rate for the same jobs.
Right. Rank is rank. So a female captain and a male captain make exactly the same dollars. But now, do they get the same respect? Do they have the same responsibilities? Not yet. But hopefully, like I said, just like in the gay world, when gay rights and LGBT rights became louder and got more attention, acceptance was better. Look, in London last week, for the London Pride, the British Royal Marines, which the U.S. Marines, that's their counterpart. We have just as much respect for them as any other branch of the service. They're the toughest guys. So the British Royal Marines marched in uniform, by the way, in the London Pride Parade last week. It was fantastic to see. I had such a great experience in the Marines. I had such a great career. I was accepted. I had many fellow Marines that knew later after training, and everything was wonderful. But there were a lot of guys that got drummed out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And those guys had train for this. I knew people that were kicked out after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of service. When they're out in the civilian world now, because they were dishonorably discharged, they don't get to put that on their resume. They have that gap in their employment history. That's a shame. Now, those things are, you can go back to court now and sue and get that reinstated. But to have that, ruin your life, and then the government also was stupid on their part because they had spent a lot of money training those guys. And again, like you brought up earlier, as long as you do your job, your sexuality doesn't have a place in any workplace. I don't know if you've heard this, but when the Me Too movement was starting, there's some funny things like on SNL and everything else, like here's the big workplace rule, don't pull your dick out. And just do that everywhere and just do your job. So I focused, did my job, and I ended up a sergeant. I went to officer candidate school, I think you might know, and completed that. And I was going to go to law school, but I decided not to serve in the JAG Corps. And I was going to go to law school, serve in the military legal arm, which is the judge advocate group, and then be a lawyer. But then I took the LSAT, and as I looked in the long range, like my 10-year plan, my 20-year plan or whatever, I didn't see myself as a lawyer. I'd always wanted to be a creative, so I graduated OCS. I resigned my commission, finished my time in the enlisted Marines, and then just got out and moved to New York after that.
So you could have been a lawyer within the Marine ranks, right? Like JAG is like the TV show.
Okay.
Yeah,
there's I'm practicing military law.
And instead of that, you're like, I want to move to New York and audition.
Yeah. I had been doing that. I'd had a long hobby in school and in community theater acting, so it wasn't a weird choice that I pulled out of the air. That was my other passion growing up.
What year did you move to New York?
1985.
Wow. That must have been amazing. What neighborhood did you end up in?
The Upper West Side. I lived above a Chinese restaurant at 70th and Columbus. I really lucked out, and it was great.
You've left the Marines. You're auditioning. Your first big break was Norman Lear working with you. How did that happen?
Yeah, I was just out of the Marines when I moved to New York, so I still had a shaved head and everything. It was hilarious. I did some theater in New York, and then I had a terrific agent at Writers and Artists and was working a little bit. I got a couple of small film things and commercial, and then my acting coach moved to L.A. I still work with her, Kate McGregor Stewart. She moved to L.A. to work, and after a while, I stayed in New York for a while, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to end up in L.A. eventually. So I came out as well, and to support myself, I got a job as a temp. I didn't have any skills, and so and I was temping at a bank at Citicorp, and for a great group of young bankers, and I didn't have any secretarial skills, but I could organize stuff and figure stuff out, and had a lot of time, and I was writing, because as you probably know, in the creative world, in the acting world especially, there's a ton of downtime. So when there weren't auditions or meetings or anything like that, a lot of actors write stuff. Mm-hmm. And some do other stuff. Some do regional theater or whatever they can do just to hone their craft. I had all these scripts from auditioning, and the more I read them, the more I thought, I can write this. So I wrote a couple of spec scripts, and I started writing, and the bankers would read them for me. And they weren't in the entertainment business, but they would give me notes and laugh. Well, Norman had bought a chain of movie theaters in one of his businesses with a loan from Citicorp. He hired one of the bankers in that group away. And this was all in a matter of the few months that I was there. And as that banker was leaving, he said, you know what, I'm going to work for Norman Lear. I'll put in a good word for you. And I thought, yeah, I can only imagine that's how this works. And about a month later, they did call and said, hey, this guy mentioned you. We actually have a job opening. Come on down. So I went down, and I fought really hard in that interview, and I sold myself, and I fought to get in. I'd heard the person before me, interviewing before me. I could hear her in her interview through the door, and it sounded like she had the job. So when I went in, I made sure I had the job.
Is that the Marine discipline?
Probably the Marine aggression. We do like to win.
I'm charging this hill.
It was a bit of that. And so he still is in my life. Amazing. His daughters, his twin daughters, and my godchildren. He'll be 96 in a couple of weeks. But the deal was that I would not mention that I was a writer or show him a script for a year. I would just pay my dues in production. And this was in the Sunset Gower Studios. We were working on a couple of shows at the time. And I said, fine, whatever. I won't film anything for a year, whatever it takes. And the next day, he walks into my office and introduces himself. And I introduced myself back, and he said, I heard you're a writer. And I wasn't sure how to answer that question because I'd made that deal not to show him anything. And I said, yes. And he said, have something on my desk tomorrow. And I had a script ready to go. I dusted it off. There was another guy that had started in the office about 2 weeks before me. It was a tiny office, by the way. There were just 5 of us. And I went to him and I said, hey, Norman just came out to me once to see a script. Got one that I think is pretty tight, but he had just graduated from film school. Said, if you want to partner up and look at it and see if you can work on it together. So we worked on that script all night and became a writing team. And we're still writing together. We're in production on a movie right now. And so I've been writing with him for over 25 years. His name's Sean Dwyer, by the way.
Sean Dwyer. What's the movie that y'all are working on now?
It's called Walk, Ride, Rodeo, and it's a Netflix original. I wrote this while I was on book tour, and it's the true story. Talk about overcoming obstacles. I think we can all identify with that. I certainly can identify with overcoming an obstacle.
Right.
And I also, as we've just talked about, I can identify with someone telling me that you can't do something, yet you proving otherwise. And this is a story about Amberly Snyder. She is a fantastic young woman who at 19 was a rising amateur rodeo barrel racer. And she tragically was in a car accident, and she's now paralyzed from the waist down. Oh. And over the course of just a few months, through sheer determination and the fact that doctors told her she would never do so many things again, she said, I'm going to walk, I'm going to ride, I'm going to rodeo. And she can't walk yet, but that woman has gotten herself back up on the horse. She sewed a seatbelt to her saddle. The Marine motto is adapt and overcome. She straps herself in, and she is now a professional rodeo rider.
So the film is like a slapstick comedy?
No, it is a
Just
true,
joking.
heartwarming. There are some fun moments, obviously, because there's a lot of time in the movie about when she wasn't unable to use her legs.
Sure.
So, but it's a true overcoming a tragedy story and triumphing over the ultimate hardship.
I like the way you write. I like that you do that. You have an empathy that a lot of humans don't usually exhibit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And who doesn't want to see something like that? This woman having something so meaningful to her that she's trained for all of her life, that means her world suddenly taken from her, and she's going to get it back. That's beautiful.
And I can identify with that. We just talked about that. If a month into my military career or a year or 2 years, someone had have taken that away, I would have been absolutely devastated. However, it's up to me to pull it together and become successful, and I would have relied on my Marine Corps training to fight through that. Life deals everybody a different set of cards, right?
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, well, fighting our own battles.
We all hold the cards. We're holding the cards, so it's up to us how we play them. Everybody can win.
Do you ever miss your DIs? Do you ever think about what they did as a team and just think, well, they were just kind of a comedy team working shtick, roasting us to break us down, to build us back?
Sometimes they definitely were comedy team, yes. A Marine drill instructor is in the top 3 most stressful jobs. It's hard, and you don't know that. It's hard to separate yourself from what it's certainly hard for me to separate myself, what I was going through, to think about what they're going through. But they're such great characters. I do miss them. They're in my daily thoughts and conversations because they're all 3 of those guys are really distinct characters in the TV show that we've developed. So we've already written the script, and we've outlined the first 3 seasons. So they each have a story arc. And, some of it's fictionalized because I certainly didn't see them after training, but they made an incredible impact. One in particular, in the book, his name is Santoro. I changed that name. And he may not have liked me, but whatever, he took a chance on me and he pushed me extra hard, and I am forever grateful to him.
Yeah, you seem to have a very special bond.
He scared the shit out of me.
But sometimes isn't that good? I mean, I'm sure you were scared working with Norman Lear, and then they're telling you you have to take a year before you can even submit a script for him to even consider. And you're like, yes, this is what I want. I have learned discipline. I have learned that I pay my dues, and the reward will be I will be given back what I've put out.
I wouldn't have tried any of the things that I've tried were it not for the Marines. And I served illegally. I technically shouldn't have been there, but what I got from it is so much more valuable than whatever I did for them in the 6 years that I was in. I get to carry the lessons, the discipline, practices with me everywhere. Before the military, and I'm not paid for or compensated by the U.S. Marine Corps, but they are the first people that I thank in anything that I do, because as a teenager, as a young kid and a teenager, I had very little going on. I had no chance for success. I had no self-confidence. I had no clear vision. I had no strong male role models. And not that those guys became my father figures or replaced that. They just snapped me into growing up and taking care of myself. So I am forever indebted to them. They gave me a ton and a lot of great material.
Definitely. Your book really is amazing. I can't stress that enough. If you're listening and you haven't read The Pink Marine, it's truly remarkable. And in that book you wrote, Greg, that of all the places you've lived, the only place from your childhood that you really miss is your home in Belle Place, Louisiana.
Oh, that was actually the name of the house. It was in Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh, I was so mistaken. I felt a sort of pride because, I'm Louisiana. I'm from I'm from the West Bank, and you lived there for a little bit.
Yes. Oh my God, that is a small world.
Isn't that crazy? Like I used to temp at City when I first moved to New York. I temped at City. In asset management, lived on the West Side, DAR. I grew up in Harvey, Louisiana, of all places. When I read that book your book, and I was like, oh my gosh, of all the places this brother lived, he was actually on the West Bank. What part of the West Bank were you on?
I was in Gretna. I think I wrote about walking through the shipyards in Harvey.
Yeah, you didn't name it, but yeah.
Ferry. After I moved to the East Bank, I still would go back and see Dale, who lived on the West Bank, and I went to West Jefferson High School.
Oh my gosh, I graduated from Arrett.
No way, that's our sister school, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've probably been passing each other on streets since we were teenagers. I love that we have that many. We've driven down that many of the same streets.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And I also, I came out very recently. I have a girlfriend, so.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Your book spoke to me on so many levels, especially your friendship with Dale and your sense of, fuck it, I will handle it, I will get it done, I am scared, but I will keep that fear at bay and I will focus on my goals. And I think this book is great for anybody to read.
Thank you for all those really kind words. I was trying to answer the teen suicide problem. And I hadn't written the book because I wasn't sure how I wanted to tell the story. I didn't know if I was going to write a movie or a book or what. And as the LGBT and questioning youth were bullied so much and chose to end their lives, I thought, let's just write this book and talk about the fact that everyone can survive everything if you just hold on for a minute. I can only imagine what you went through personally to get to the place where you felt comfortable to come out. And it's hard.
Yeah. It's hard just being. Like, being is holy, but it's like the hardest thing to do for many of us.
And hopefully we'll get to the place and the level of acceptance will increase. And I certainly hope, look, I don't know how much support you had in your process, but I don't know if I could have done it without the support that I had, without not only Dale, but then the military. Again, I got that weird boost of confidence from a place that didn't want me.
Well, I think you're an amazing person. How can people keep up with you? I know on Twitter you are at EatGregEat, and you've got a blog. You seem like a very grateful, gracious person.
Well, life's given you a lot. It's given me a lot. I have to live by the philosophy that no matter how much life gives you, give more back.
Thank you so very much, Greg Cope White. Good luck with your projects. I'd say break your legs, but it doesn't seem like the right thing to say to a former Marine. Semper Fi. Shout out, Ari. You know you're my favorite soldier. Thanks for listening, y'all. Please do join me at lisalandry.com. You can sign up for my YouTube channel. If you subscribe, you will know when each podcast drops every week on Woman's Wednesday. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you will receive a free audio download of my stand-up comedy. Not suitable for work, y'all. Anyway, thanks for listening.